Hello, math friends. I had a chance to meet with the STEM committee to talk about calculus texts for this coming year. And I shared about a pilot that I'm doing this quarter with the Briggs calculus text. I'm teaching Calculus 4, and this is the first time I've had a chance to use this text. Pearson let me pilot it for the quarter at no cost to the students. And so it's been kind of an interesting experience. I can't recall the last time I piloted a text. And so I feel like I've learned a lot just by seeing what happens, kind of some of the good, some of the things that are the same, and maybe some of the benefits. So I shared this with the committee, and they asked that I put together a short presentation to help you understand what this new textbook might be like. So I'm going to walk through a little bit on the text itself, a little bit on MyLabs, and a little bit about maybe the connections that we as Highline College might have with this particular book. So let me begin by simply sharing the table of contents. So the Briggs calculus book is a calc book. If you compare this to the Stewart book that we've been using for 2+ decades, you'll notice that it looks very similar. This chapter 7 here is a chapter that would exist if we had a late transcendental approach, but we no longer have that. Otherwise, it's mostly the same. That said, there's one serious benefit. In Stewart, this sequences and infinite series section and this power series section are combined together into a single chapter. But now that we have broken our calculus into Math 163 and 264, the Briggs approach is really nice because the chapter 11 on power series would fit within Math 163, and then the sequences and infinite series would fit within Math 264. So for example, right now I'm in the process of teaching about infinite series. We finished this yesterday, talked about the integral test today. We'll talk about the comparison tests beginning tomorrow. So topics are the same. The approach is relatively standard, pretty similar to the Stewart text that we've been using, with just a few of their own spins on things. Rather than digging through and trying to find the best section for everything, I thought I would just share what I'm doing in class. So tomorrow I'm going to be talking about the comparison tests. I'm working from the ebook. The ebook is built in the Wolfram CDF player, so it's interactive. One of the definite benefits of this is it'll have these interactive manipulates that can be worked right in the ebook, but there's also a static book that's available for students that is accessible. And so I don't know that there's any math platform out there, book or online homework system that's fully accessible, but this particular book has an accessible option that's already available, built right into MyLabs, that's available to our students from before day one, which will certainly go a long way towards meeting the needs of all our Highline students. But I'm working from the standard ebook through the CDF player. So I'm going to expand all the tabs. So for those that have taught Calc 3 or Calc 4 recently, you'll remember that in the comparison test, you use a known series to and something known like a p-series or a geometric series to help you figure out whether some slight variant of it might also converge or diverge. So as I read through trying to figure out what I want to talk about tomorrow, one of the things that I run into right away is I see this animation or manipulate or interactive figure. And this particular one is talking about how if the sequence of, and actually this is the sequence of partial sums, but if the terms in the known sequence converge and are above, then the unknown below series will also converge. So we get this idea that the known one converges, the one below it must also converge. And so I just take note and I go, oh, that's figure 10.32. And later on, I'll take advantage of that fact. And I keep reading along and I see the next manipulate. It's doing the same thing, but now the sequence of the known partial sums, the black sequence of partial sums, diverges by the p-series test. And so the unknown red series here must diverge because the thing below it must be, is going to infinity. And so I just have these nice, simple animations built right in. You don't have to dig anywhere for them. The ones in this particular section are pretty straightforward, and they vary pretty dramatically from section to section of what's there. So examples, kind of all the usual things you would expect to find in texts, in a text. One thing I'd like to point out in the way of the limit comparison test is that the standard version of the limit comparison test talks about how if this limit is equal to a number, the limit converges, then the two series share the same fate. And Briggs points out these two subtleties. It says, look, if that limit is 0 and the known converges, then the unknown must also converge. If the limit's infinity and the known diverges, then the unknown must also diverge. And this is just a simple subtlety that's skipped over in our Jimmy Stewart book. And I think that it speaks to the fact that that this book is aiming for being complete and mathematically accurate and rigorous, but also doing it in a way that's approachable and practical for students. So maybe it's not the easiest book to read, but I think it's probably at least as easy and as helpful as the one that we've been using in the past. So I'd read through all of this, and afterward I'd realize, okay, maybe I want to show one of those animations in my class. And so I can go through the online program and I can download those animations so that when I come to class, rather than having to weed through the whole ebook, I just have this one interactive figure that I can open up and share with my students. And so this is that same figure 10.32 that I talked about when I was looking through the full text. Now I can just focus right in there, none of this paging back and forth. I thought I would show a slightly more complicated interactive figure that I used today in class. Here we're talking about the connection between a convergent series and the fact that the terms must go to 0. And so notice we have our partial sums on the side, but then we have a little checkbox here where we can open up a separate window, and you can see how even as the terms, the partial sums are approaching the limit s, you can see the individual terms are all approaching 0. Students tend to understand what's going on in these pretty quickly. They tend to be really, really intuitive. And I, of course, include them in the assignment so students can download them and play with them themselves as well. Let me show one more animation. I think this will do it. So here's one from 3D graphing talking about spherical coordinates. And so using this system, you can see that rho is the distance from the origin, pretty easy to work with. Theta is the distance, the angle around on the XY plane, starting from the positive x-axis in a counterclockwise direction, just like we've done in the past. And then the more interesting one is, of course, phi, which is 0 at the positive z-axis and rotates down to pi on the negative z-axis. So we, of course, have the 3D rotation ability that's pretty standard. And then one thing I'd like to point out is that this particular animation also has this extra feature where we can ask what happens if, for example, phi is equal to a constant. And so you can see the cone appearing when I set phi equal to constant. Maybe you don't see why that would be the case. So let's rotate our thetas around and, oh, okay, I can see why it is that if I fix my phi, I could get a cone, right? That's how that surface would happen. And so these are just 3 simple examples of the animations that come standard in this particular text. Let's see, by way of context, I saw that another calc book had maybe a couple hundred interactive figures. This particular one has, I think, around 750 interactive figures. And so I like this book because all those interactive figures are available to us as instructors. They're also available to students from day one for students that want to mess around, and they're right in the ebook. Let's see, a couple other notes about the e-text. Some some of us like to use work-alongs, and what I've noticed as some of my colleagues have shared their work-alongs with me, which has been a huge benefit to me as a teacher. But one of the things I've noticed is that oftentimes they'll take screenshots from what's available, and then they'll kind of copy paste those things in, which makes some formatting, or which creates some formatting error issues. And what I'd like to point out is that you can simply copy the text straight out of the ebook and paste it into your Word doc, or you could even do it in Mathematica if you wanted to word process in Mathematica, as this is created in. So that's one note. The other is one of the things that I hate about ebooks. I've hated about ebooks in the past is that I have to go through some awkward interface on the websites in order to get to them. So I've got to go to the ebook and then browse through some weird awkward PDF trying to get to the right spot. They're not very manageable. Here, I simply went in and downloaded all the sections. So here's all my ebook, all the files, and if I wanted to open up a new section, I'd just double click on it and boom, I'm ready to go looking at whatever this section happened to be. So it's very easy to manipulate through. A lot of the awkwardness of the technology is gone in this particular view. So that's a little bit about the eText. Frankly, it's a calculus book. I think it's on par with Stewart. It's neither much better. I don't think it's any worse. I think it's a calc book. It talks about the basic concepts of limits, derivatives, and integrals. I think the one place that it really is far superior is in the way of all these animations or interactive figures. And for me, that's a huge selling point. Calculus is such an intuitive thing. Let me talk a little bit about the online homework platform. Again, keeping with the same theme, I'm going to be talking about section 10.5 on the comparison test tomorrow. And so I want to build my assignment. And what I did was I started, there's some sample assignments built into MyLabs. And I was like, I don't know what to do. I got a lot going on. I'm teaching online for the first time. So I decided to start with their default assignments and work from there. And so I come in, created the assignment, and what I want to do is kind of go through and see what's in their stock assignment and see what's available. Notice there's some review questions. So here's an old limit question. And then here you have kind of the standard multiple guess, converge, diverge type of thing. A little bit of review. These aren't very exciting. But notice they're starting to say the limit comparison test with, and then here's a fill in the blank where they're saying, what are we going to compare to? And so they're asking slightly more complicated, not super complicated questions, but questions that certainly are at least on par with with what's in the Jimmy Stewart stuff. Notice here's a review question where it looks like they're trying to get at trig substitution by way of review. And I'm like, look, my students don't need to remember trig substitution. I'm in Calc 4. They either know it or they don't. It's just not that big a deal. And so I'm going to come through here and remove the question and keep going. I'm going to make my way through. Make my way through all these questions. At some point, I'm done. And now my assignment is almost built, but I want to add a couple other things. So I'm going to click over into the media and choose that I want to just look at the interactive figures in the video in this section. And so notice there's a video lecture. This is like a PowerPoint through. It's not replacing what I'm doing, but I just want to have it there as a resource for my students. And then I'm also going to add the 2 interactive figures from this section on convergence, divergence that we talked about into the assignment. So I add those into the assignment, I resort. So when the students come in here, they click on the 2 comparison test figures, they get a point for each of those. They click on the video lecture, they get a point for that. If they want to watch those things and take advantage of those resources, more power to them. If they don't, then they at least know that they're there. And they don't seem to mind clicking because it's sort of free points for them. Before moving on, I want to go back to the questions and point out the fact that there's lots of them. And so in the early days of online homework, you didn't have much selection for assignments. And here, if you look at the list, you'll notice that nearly every question in the assignment has an online version to it. Of course, many of them have some sort of ranking in difficulty as well. So there's many questions to choose from. They're all good. I'm pretty sure that the little icon here says that the question is screen reader accessible, which is pretty cool. I'm kind of still stuck in the dark ages, and I'm still not using Canvas. Frankly, it's the one thing I wish I could redo about this quarter, is get myself in Canvas in time. But one thing that I've been told multiple times is that MyLabs integrates nicely with Canvas, including the gradebook. And so for those of you that like to do your grades in Canvas, you can easily connect the two things together, and things work pretty smoothly together. As I wrap this video up, I just wanted to share a couple of final thoughts. So I think the important voice here is the student voice. And so I'm in the midst of conducting a survey from my students on what they think of the book. Remember, these are students that have had 3/4 of calculus with Jimmy Stewart, and now they're in this pilot with the MyLabs. And so I'm going to ask them, you know, what do you think? Do you read the book? Does the book matter to you? Does the technology matter to you? Do you care between MyLabs and WebAssign? And I will share those results when I get them. Second is a comment on online homework. You know, if you talk to Aaron, who's my good friend, he says that MyLabs is this vastly superior system to WebAssign. Whatever. From my perspective, an online homework platform is an online homework platform, regardless of what the, you know, what some people say. I don't know that one is vastly superior to the other. There's things that I like about WebAssign. There's things I like about MyLabs. I've used them both lots of times, and it works. They both work. They both get the job done. Any new system takes some adjusting. We all know that, but it's nothing that is insurmountable. And frankly, an advantage of MyLabs is we do kind of have an in with somebody that's very much in the know on that. And so we really are blessed to have Aaron as a part of the team. Last couple thoughts. This is, the Briggs book is in the 3rd edition. When I came to the department, I was told never choose a book that's in its 1st edition, maybe not even 2nd edition. Let other schools work through the kinks. This book's in its 3rd edition. It's been around a while. It's been tested. You know, there's already places where I'm like, man, I wish they'd do it this way. And I'm thinking about emailing the authors and saying, maybe when you hit 4th edition, you should, you know, fix such and such. But it seems really solid, and I have yet to run into any really quirky things in the book itself. And then lastly, the book is local. There's 4 authors. Cochran, the 2nd title author, is from Whitworth College in Spokane. Eric Schultz, who did all the animations, is at Walla Walla Community College. He's been at numerous math conferences with us. And so, you know, as much as I want to support Jimmy Stewart's Integral House now that he's dead, I guess I just don't feel any obligation to send my money elsewhere. And like, if we can do things that encourage calculus and encourage innovation and encourage good authorship that are within the state, like, why not? So you asked me, what do I think all told? I think it's a good book. Do I think it's the best book ever? No, it's a calculus book. Do I think it's worth switching? Yeah. And I think it's mostly worth switching because I think the interactive stuff will help our students, to understand, and will help us as teachers. And I also think those interactive tools are simple enough that even those of us that aren't comfortable with them now could pretty easily pick it up. And so it's not going to require a major change in your teaching to be able to use those resources. And so I think that the book will be easier for students to learn from, and especially in a world where online teaching is becoming more the norm, where we're teaching classes online or hybrid that we haven't taught in that modality previously. I think that our students can benefit from having a text and a system that's designed to take advantage of the technology that's out there and the things that exist. So I'd ask you all to consider it. I think it's good. I think it's been a success. I'll share the student survey results when I get them. But I appreciate you all watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. and I look forward to the opportunity to collaborate with all of you face-to-face in the not too distant future. Thanks very much, everybody.